Okay, this is Romager Radio. Carl Romager here. We were bumped off the air there, I think maybe by an atmospheric disturbance. It's hard to say exactly what happened. But we were talking, and Don, you can call back in anytime you want. I apologize that that happened, but as you know, we can't have 100% technical perfection at all times when you're dealing with an internet feed. That's just the way life goes. So this is part 2 of Romager Radio, and we're back on the air here. We've been talking about world domination, World War III, and how the whole world's going to go to hell. Let's see if we can get Don back on the air here, because I know he was calling in. And I blamed him for driving across South Carolina. But I think the real problem, actually, and here's that beautiful ringing. I think the real problem... Hey, Don.
Yes, sir.
I was blaming you for driving across South Carolina, but I think we got a blip in the internet here because I got bumped off all around. So,
okay, good. Well, that's not just me. I hate to miss the show. I really do.
Oh, I appreciate it. So, what are you doing out there? Where are you driving to?
Well, we're driving back from Atlanta.
Oh, very nice. Were you at the beach? What were you doing?
It's a nice drive. It's pretty country. But anyways, I wanted to tell you about the moonshine.
Yeah, what's going on?
If I were to make a trip to Pennsylvania and bring some of that along, would you be interested in having some of that?
Sure.
Okay, all right.
Always.
It's the real stuff. I mean, these guys wear the camo and they have the Duck Dynasty beards, and it's the real stuff.
The Duck Dynasty beards. I know the type.
So, I'm concerned. It sounds like you're crying Chicken Little.
Well, I don't know if I'm crying.
I don't
know if I'm crying Chicken Little, but I'm a little concerned. And the reason I was bringing up World War III just was more of a joke than anything else. Except that I don't think it's technically really a joke. We've got.
You're probably right.
We got all kinds of weird crap going on all over the place right now. And, Russia's belligerent, China's belligerent. What we're seeing is everybody else sort of poking in all of a sudden, getting a little more aggressive. Syria fell apart, but we didn't react the way we said we were. We didn't, when he crossed the red line, so to speak, used chemical weapons, we didn't do anything about that.
I'm just wondering if World War II really never ended.
Well,
where do you draw the line from what was World War II and what was World War III? Because it seems like it's all sort of one continuous story, really.
It's actually funny you mention that because Keegan, the British military historian, wrote a book on World War I and basically said the reason he had to write a book on World War I was you can't understand World War II unless you actually understand World War I, because all World War II was basically finishing off World War I. In other words, everything that happened in II was set up by what happened in I. And you're right. We are reliving World War II.
Probably, if you really wanted to argue, you could say that it started with the French Revolution.
Yeah.
It's more of like a revolution, a global revolution.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And in fact, let me just tell you. Let's just talk about World War II for a second. At the end of World War II, we created the State of Israel, right? We divided Iraq up, and we divided the Middle East up into its current format, all as a result of what the powers chose to do at the end of World War II. China and its current borders, that's sort of left over from after the Korean War. Which was part of the battle against communism post World War II. Russia and the Iron Curtain and the breakup of Europe is all left over. So yeah, if you look at all the different overlays of the world and all the way things were laid out, you can say almost every major area of geopolitical fighting or battle is left over from World War II.
I mean, even Africa, the breakdown of the colonies there and all the independence movements and those are all post World War II.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I just put you on a little effects there, Don. I was trying.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. I get a little background noise coming in, but that's okay.
That's my motor roaring, probably.
Yeah, you know, calling in on a motorcycle takes a lot of balls. So yeah, I figure, hey.
Hey, I was thinking when you were doing the sound effect, it'd be cool if you could like have some of us pick out our own.
Your own sound effects.
Yeah. I kind of like the gurgling water. Oh, I mean the bubbles.
The bubbles. Yeah, you want to be the. I've got all kinds of stuff in here. I've got barn doors closing. I got dogs barking.
I'm glad you get the serious callers out of the way first.
Yeah. Oh well, my man was talking about terraforming Mars, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure where on the seriousness list we are with that one. But on the other hand, I don't think he's far from the mark. 50 years is probably about the right amount of time to get some commercial return.
I don't see us lasting that long, really.
You're not giving us 50 years.
Yeah, probably not.
This is
all these climate matters are going to, have us spending billions on fossil fuels to the point where we're choking. It won't matter at that point.
Actually, I do have one for the guy who wanted to talk about terraforming Mars. I've got this little sound effect called alien communication. That might be a good one for him. Play that in the back. And actually, he's always a great caller. I mean, he talks a little bit about weather control and things like that some people might, think we're on coast to coast. But other than that, I mean, he really knows his history and he knows a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff. So he's a great caller in that respect. In fact, he starts dropping information sometimes. I'm like, well, I better Google this quick to see where we're going.
Yeah, I guess there was something on the internet recently about that. What is that station in the Arctic or in Alaska?
Yeah, it's
like a huge radar array or something that.
Yeah, and it's
that's where they're controlling the weather.
I'll remember the name of it here in a minute, but it's this giant energy. They have the ability to quote, blow energy up into the ionosphere and then measure its effect. Okay, and a lot of people think it's a weather control device or other thing, but it is always interesting when the government builds a giant array out in the middle of nowhere and then powers it with a power plant for no other express purpose but, quote, charging the ionosphere from time to time to study things, Well,
it was my understanding that had something to do with communicating with submarines.
Yeah, and something to do with disrupting other people's communications. And so if you know this about AM signals, certain radio stations like 720, which is the Catholic radio station out of Sharmanstown here in Pennsylvania now, at night they have to turn their transmitter down to like 5 watts or have to turn it off at a certain point, I forget. But if they leave it on, because of the way the ionosphere changes at night, the signal will carry from like here till forever. So a lot of these stations like out of Boston, you can hear that all around the country because the signal carries that far. But they're grandfathered in. They don't have to turn their transmitter down. A lot of stations have to dial their transmitter back at night. So,
that's interesting. I remember as a kid when they had AM radio.
And that has something to do with the ionosphere. And during the daylight hours, the sun charges the ionosphere so the way it reflects the signal differently or degrades the signal differently. Whereas at night, the signal will go forever. Now, they have technology for that, too, now, where you can have a self-interfering signal that's designed to directionally interfere the signal and this sort of thing for modern solutions, engineering solutions for radio signals. But anyhow, my long point of that is the ionosphere certainly does a lot of different weird stuff that building a giant facility to manipulate it does sort of spark the curiosity.
I can see where the conspiracists, would find some point of curiosity with that.
Yeah, well, why not?
I don't think they're real transparent about it.
Why not? You know what I mean?
I'll tell you the one that scares me, Carl, is when I travel.
Yeah. Oh no. We lost Don. 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 Don, 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 don. Don. Don, don, don. Don. Don's gone. I don't think he knows he's gone. Don was in a wind tunnel anyhow. Oh, what is the name of that facility? Come on, one of you guys must know the name of the facility in Alaska, where the government screws with the ionosphere. Come on now. Don't make me look up my fringe files here. 717-916-5189, 717-916-5189 to get live on the air. If you want to get jiggy with it, we'd be happy to hear what you guys have to say. Again, 717-916-5189, and we'll take your calls. We've been talking about the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. But the idea of, are we in the seeds of the beginning of World War III? And it's just a mental exercise. Really, purpose is just to explore the possibilities. I'm not claiming anything's actually true. Don, I think they were interfering with your communications.
Okay, yeah, there could be. Especially when you mentioned Y12.
Well, when you mentioned the right keywords on the air, probably the NSA shuts us down.
That's funny stuff.
Yeah, I can't prove it, but plutonium. Let's see what happens if my computer goes dark. Don, do you have the 1 pound of plutonium we need to make the bomb? Yeah? Okay, good. Actually, guys...
Don't do that. You can't represent me anymore.
That's true. Well, guys used to do that on the Usenet. Back before there was really the internet as we know it, before there was a web and people had like the news groups, there are guys who had keywords that were all... like words designed to trigger the NSA to read your posts because they'd slide in like plutonium or uranium or bomb or dynamite or the president's name or whatever combination of keywords they thought was most likely to cause some guy in Washington to go crazy. But as we know now, they actually in real time are probably listening to all of our phone calls and broadcasts and cataloging it all and then just pulling it up as they need it. But hey. Such is the world we live in, apparently.
I think a lot of people privacy issues they worry about, like the NSA seeing what they're looking at when they're masturbating or something.
Yeah, well, it's like my webcam.
Porn related.
If my webcam turned on right now, I'd be very embarrassed. And by the way, that's one of the things they talk about though is this ability, for instance, to get into computer systems and turn on webcams and look around and do all that sort of stuff. I can tell you for a fact that the NSA is interesting and problematic, but the way consumer companies database information, I'll give you an example. There's a company that sends out people who go to every Pennsylvania district judge's office every week and get all the new court filings, okay? And then they sell the information to lawyers as advertising, right? But it turns out that they don't really just sell the information to lawyers for advertising. That's a little spin-off of the main purpose of the job, which is just to database all this information and then sell it to various networks that database public information, okay? And so one of the ideas is 20 years from now, when you tell an employer or somebody who's running a background on you that you've never been in trouble with the law before, and you got what's called ARD or some of these other expungement programs where your court file's been destroyed and the government's removed all official record of any interaction, it doesn't matter. The government won't have it anymore because they have an expungement order. But the guy who went to the courthouse and photocopied it and then put it into their giant database, which is this company, and all the people they share that database with will still be able to see exactly not only that you had a DUI 20 years ago or a domestic fight or something, but they'll be able to pull up the affidavit of probable cause and see who else was involved in it and the whole nine. The whole thing's archived because why not? And so there's a bigger private database of criminal histories that includes stuff that's expunged from the public databases. And that's true. So now, okay, that's interesting, but the same companies that are aggregating that also aggregate from your credit card company, your purchasing habits. And they aggregate from people you do business with, your purchasing habits, and from your internet provider, your internet habits. And then they tie it all together. And that's why you can get this sort of like weird consumer mail sometimes. And you're like, wow, how did they know I wanted one of these? Well, that's because they've databased the hell out of you.
Pretty scary.
Yeah. And it's not the NSA. It's all in private hands. And so the reality is probably you have as much to worry about or more to worry about this information in private hands as you do in government hands in this day and age, particularly when corporations actually run the world anyhow.
Well, that's an interesting point then, because, I mean, wouldn't a libertarian prefer privatized, information gathering.
Yeah, and a libertarian would prefer privatized, and I agree with that. In fact, a libertarian would have to say there should be no regulation of it. The problem is where this breaks down is the same way it breaks down when they teach you in school that capitalism is good, and then the next week they start this thing about the trust busters and Standard Oil, and you're like, well, wait a minute, I thought it was good to have a company and be really big, and I don't get, and you're like, well, it's better to have 3 but not 2, and definitely not 1, unless, except, maybe, and yeah, so these answers are never completely linear, and so you're right. The problem is you're assuming transparency and you're assuming equality between actors. And here's the answer. If some giant megacorporation has got all the data collected and they're using it, I don't know how I as an individual have any leverage over that corporation but through a legal action, which is going to require government intervention of some sort. So I think a libertarian, because remember, libertarians accept that some government is necessary. So the only fight between a libertarian and a soccer mom is what's necessary. Soccer moms want to save the puppy dogs and the kids and the world, and they're all Democrats that live in the suburbs and think there should be a program for that. Okay, libertarians, the only real difference is they don't think there should be a program for anything except what's absolutely necessary, and then you can have a big fight over what's absolutely necessary. But that's the line we draw, right? What's necessary? Only what's necessary.
I got you.
Yeah.
Well, there's libertarians that could swing one way or the other, though, kind of.
Oh, yeah, and you could...
Like Ken Gilletti's sort of a left-swinging libertarian versus your...
Glenn Beck.
Who's more of a right-swinging libertarian.
And that may have a lot to do with what hand the doctor was. Left or right-handed, but never mind. But actually, and it's interesting because Glenn Beck was actually talking about this the other day. He said that Penn Jillette had said to him, because of course they talk now because they're like asshole buddies these days, and he said that he told him, you know what, it's going to be about 30 years before what you and I want to fight about is going to make a difference between us. Meaning, basically, the government's gone so far the opposite direction from where we're at as libertarians, either a lefty or a righty-leaning libertarian, that it's going to take 30 years to undo what's happened to the point where the distinction between the two of us will actually become a political point, as instead of a hypothetical point should the government ever turn back to where we would want to see it. And Glenn Beck said he agreed with that. And what he basically was saying is if you're a libertarian in America today, we're so far from a libertarian ideal. Libertarians on the left and the right, as of right now, are 100% on the same page. It's going to be a long time before they become completely divergent on the fine points of policy. And I thought that was a pretty clever statement because I can see some truth to that.
I can see them important as a third party, at some point, more popularized.
Yeah, and I think what will happen is the libertarians are going to take some of the conservatives out of the Republican Party, or I shouldn't say that, some of the tax and spend, or don't tax and spend people out of the Republican Party who don't care too much about the social stuff. And similarly, people out of the Democratic Party who think, that the government doesn't have to have a program for everything, but also don't want the government interfering in abortions and everything else that goes on in private life. Or making decisions. Yeah, I always say Pennsylvania wants to be it's Father's Day, so I can say it. Pennsylvania wants to be my father. They want to tell me when to drink, where to buy it, how much to smoke, how much to do this, how much I should pay for milk, what time the car dealership should be open, all kinds of laws that are like, these are the rules dads make, okay? These aren't the rules governments are supposed to be making.
It sounds kind of socialist to me there, what you have there in Pennsylvania. Yeah,
Pennsylvania wants to be my father. But here's what happens. All my conservative friends come out Bible swinging, going, well, it's a good thing they're closed on Sunday. I'm like, well, you watched a goddamn baseball game on Sunday. I don't even want to hear it from you. All right, I want to go look at cars, and but you can watch baseball. And you don't feel bad for that guy pitching peanuts at the stadium. I don't hear you protesting because he's working on a Sunday, or the hunting. I can't hunt on a Sunday. No hunting on a Sunday. Oh, it's the Lord's day, and the farmers don't want you out there, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I have a one-day weekend when it comes to hunting. Okay, I take a day off work. Oh, yeah, well, you can have the first day of school off. Oh, okay, I'm not in school anymore, but okay. Where I grew up in New York State, the first thing they did after they got rid of Sunday hunting was they go, oh, we should open on Saturday. That way guys can hunt the first 2 days of season for deer uninterrupted. How great is that? You go up to New York on a Friday night, you go out hunting Saturday morning, you have to quit hunting till dark on Sunday. How nice is that? 2 full days of hunting. But
well, it is the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I mean, that sounds socialist to me.
And if I had $1 for every time somebody said to me, well, it's a Commonwealth law, or that state's a Commonwealth, so there is no difference between a Commonwealth state and a state, except they're both named different things, but there's no correlation of their laws or well, you live in a Commonwealth, so and I'm like, yeah, I live in a common something. Hey, by the way, did you see the Pennsylvania legislature? And I hate making this show about Pennsylvania because my goal is ultimately that since we're disembodied here on the internet, we can be talking, we could talk about anything here. But the Pennsylvania legislature is about to become, or is on the verge of becoming, the highest paid legislature in the United States. And now they have $1 billion deficit coming up that they're struggling with. And in their defense, if they cut their wages in half, it wouldn't make a damn bit of difference about the deficit. Symbolically, it would be interesting, but in practical effect, their pay doesn't really make it. It's just a drop in the bucket. But they make more than anybody else except California. California, by the way, may fall below Pennsylvania because of self-imposed cuts on their own money. Now, in the California legislator's defense, the government of California has more economy and more underneath it, such that if it were an independent nation, it would be something like the 5th largest economy in the world, okay? So California is kind of a weird state because versus all the other states in the union, California is like a small country. It really is. I mean, as much stuff as they have going on, as big as their economy is, they're a nation. If they weren't part of the United States, they'd be like the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. So at least you can make an argument if you're a California legislator. Hey, we get paid well, but we're basically a country. What the hell justifies the Pennsylvania legislature's high pay? Hey, we're really corrupt. Yeah, that's why we get the most money. Oh, not that money? Oh, you mean the official money? Oh, well, I don't know. We do a damn good job and we're damn good at it. I think that's actually what you would get from the Pennsylvania legislature as their best justification. I hope they become the highest paid just so they can have the dubious honor of telling us that this year they've debated whether or not people should have dogs on leashes for 60 days, but spent absolutely no time whatsoever on privatization of alcohol or Sunday hunting or anything else that's damn important to me.
Right.
And if I hear one more person complaining about a dog being tied up in the backyard, I'm going to vomit. Okay, that's what dogs are for. They're for tie up in your backyard and run in circles and drink out of bowls and make the lawn into a big muddy mess. That's what dogs are for, and a few other things too. But where I grew up in farm country, somebody said, "What do you think a dog's worth?" And I said, "Well, best I can tell, most farmers figure that a burlap sack and a brick is worth more than 6 dogs, or worth less than 6 dogs." But
I'm not going to touch that one.
Yeah, I know. Somebody can get mad at me. But hey, I mean, I'm just saying the realities of farm country was, I got some more puppies to get rid of. Of course, when you're a little kid, you're like crying. You're like, Mommy, what are they doing with the puppies? Oh, you weren't supposed to hear about that.
Well, I'm a believer in population management, though.
That's why
I don't think it should be
spay
out of that way.
Right. You could take those puppies musky fishing. They're perfectly good for that. Now, you can spay or neuter your pets. Bob Barker was big on that. The Price is Right. And given the fact that every old lady in America watched that show, I imagine all the cats were well taken care of. It's just the dogs that nobody got the message on.
Hey, here's a local thing I wanted to mention. You always plug something, it seems like, when you're showing some product or something. K&Ray potato chips. Have you ever tried those?
I have had one of those, but I'm trying to think.
It's interesting because they were local. I mean, they were from Newville, Pennsylvania, a mom and pop company, and I guess they were bought out by a bigger company, and then they've been bought out by an even bigger company now. And my dad sent me a picture today of the bag of chips now $5.30. Like, wow, what the hell kind of chips are those? Well, that seems expensive for a bag of chips.
Somewhere around here.
You live in the chip belt. Pennsylvania is sort of like the snack food capital of the world.
Well,
the country.
I was going to say, somewhere around here they make Gibbles, and those are as are several of our local potato chips. They're proudly fried in lard. Okay,
lard, that makes the difference.
And they are good chips. There's no doubt. And hey, I like lard in my pie crust too, and hell, right around my waist usually. But the thing about that is you remember back maybe 15, 20 years ago when they were saying you're supposed to eat lots of carbs and no fat and get your diabetes all ramped up and all that bad advice. But everybody was like, lard, evil, bad. Like, well, welcome to central Pennsylvania where they still put it like in big, made with real lard across the bag because that was a selling point, even though the rest of the world was in an anti-lard phase. But Gibbles, I'm trying to think of a few other brands. But I just remember when I going to the grocery store and going, yep, only here in Pennsylvania would you see it, still proudly displayed, made with real lard. Imagine McDonald's had that. Our fries are in real lard. People would be going crazy. But it's a selling point. And there are a lot of good potato chips around here, actually. Although potato chips are going just the same way as everything else. Chocolate. Years ago, there was two kinds of chocolate, right? There was dark chocolate and milk chocolate. And then occasionally there was other kinds of chocolate, but really it was just like chocolate with nuts in it or chocolate with coconut in it or, Almond Joy or, something, or chocolate and peanut butter or Reese's. But then all of a sudden, Americans, the same way coffee went, now there's 800 kinds of coffee. Now you go to the store. Oh, can I get an 82% cocoa? Yes, with the nibs, please. And it's really branched out to where chocolates now, or regional chocolates, I want to try this chocolate from this country or that country. Hershey has a thing where you can try different molten chocolates from different countries to get the taste or feel for them. And potato chips suddenly, I woke up one day and looked around the grocery store and all of a sudden the bags are all fancy with pictures and, potato chips are coming in all these gourmet flavors and combinations and Frito-Lay, and of course everybody's in on it. But it's sort of like there's a renaissance in chips. There's no longer I think when I was a kid, the chips went like this. There were plain chips and then there were crinkle cut chips. Those were your two major choices. We're not going to count Pringles in here, by the way, okay? So you have regular chips and crinkle cut chips. And then they came in a couple primary flavors. Salt and vinegar, sour cream and onion or chive, depending on how they wanted to name it, barbecue. And I think that was almost it, right? There was there was like three main flavors, and maybe the thick cut versus the thin cut, or the crinkle versus the non-crinkle, and then Pringles had some other, Pringles not really actually slices of potato, but basically same flavor schemes. Now they come in 80 different cans, color coded, some short, some tall. None of them quite big enough to accommodate my hand, by the way. So you find yourself, unable to reach into the can very well. But back when they had the sharp edges on those things, woohoo! So I mention that only because now if you go, I think, to even just like the Sheets or any of the other mini marts, there are more varieties of chips than there are races of people in the United States.
I think that's true, yeah. Well, that's the advantage of corporatization, I guess you would say. It gives us variety.
Yeah, and I guess they needed some reason for the mini mart to have more than 20 items. I could go through my whole thing on watching the beverage displays change at those places too. Like I'm sure other people have had this problem, which is you find a mini mart you frequent for whatever reason. It's on your way to work or however it is. And so each one seems to have a slightly different array of beverages. So they all have Coke and they all have Pepsi. But which iced tea they're going to carry, for instance, okay? That seems to change over time. So they all carry like one milk-related iced tea. So, if they have milk in the thing, then they've got the jugs of iced tea. And then they got the single-serve ones, but which brand and whether they're going to have the diet or which flavor, whether they're going to have a lot of different Snapple. It all changes over time. And so once you find you find a beverage you like, my thing is you got about 6 months to enjoy it before it gets rotated out and something else gets rotated in because, I don't know, all your buddies stop drinking it or what happens. But I could do a whole tracking thing, and I'm sure if we got somebody on the show who actually is like a beverage manager at a Sheetz or something, they could tell us. I would bet there's like a 50% turnover of the different things that are in those in a year's time. Maybe it's a little less than that. But if you knocked out just the major brands, knock out the Coke, knock out the Pepsi and the Mountain Dew. I'm not counting those. But just amongst everything else you can find in there, right? So do you ever drink this water called Black? Have you seen this stuff?
No, I haven't seen that.
Well, probably didn't make it down to South Carolina yet for probably prejudice reasons that you. But we have it here now, and it's water that's got pyruvate in it, so it's low pH. I'm sorry, high pH, and so it's not acidic. It's a high pH, and it's got this pyruvate, whatever, makes it black. And when you drink it, the bottle turns clear, and there's a message written in black on the bottle. Clever. Which is cool, and I looked it up on one of the beverage websites and read a little bit about it, and it tastes okay. It's just water. It's just another way to sell you water. Instead of looking clear, they dyed it charcoal black with some health adjunct, and it's not bad. It really isn't.
Well, somebody who did their marketing research probably never talked to anybody who owns an RV, because if you do, you would know that black water is not terribly appetizing.
Right. It's not what you're looking for. Well, so I go to the store, and now they got, at the Sheetz, they got 8 flavors of it all of a sudden, right? And I'm like, okay, great. This is another one. They've rotated 8 flavors of this stuff in. Now they're all black with different colored caps, so you know what flavor it is, right? And different color markings on the bottle. I give it 6 months, and then it'll be down to like the original flavor and one other. Or it'll be bizarre. Everything will be gone except for the lemon, or something like that. So I have a whole theory on how these mini marts rotate through their stock. So if anybody out there listening knows, set me straight, because I'm just curious. These are just my observations. I have another tip for you, Don, too. When drinking at the mini mart, and you get the coffee, never take all the coffee out of one pot. Odds are it could be strong, it could be weak. Instead, what you do is you mix 3 different pots together, and that way, you're going to get the average.
Yeah, I do that all the time anyways. There's like a little extra kick in there, so you have to get some darker roast.
I just never been one
to custom blending my coffee.
A cuvee. I think that's called a cuvee. 717-916-5189 if you want to get on the air. We'd be happy to have you. I don't know what else to say here. It's just kind of one of those days. It was Father's Day. I had my son today. We had a great time. Went over to a friend's house for a picnic, and there was 2 other kids and a couple dogs there, and they all ran around like a pack in circles through the yard all afternoon, which is probably going to tire him out good.
That's what Father's Day is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I drank some Shiner from Spotzel Brewery in Texas, Shiner Bock. And actually, I got their sampler pack. So there's 6 different beers in there. So I made my goal for the afternoon to sample all 6.
That's fun. I enjoy doing that.
Yeah. And so then I left the rest of the case at the friend's house as payment for the picnic, right? But he had shot a bear, so we actually had real bear meat, which was pretty good, actually. He's a really good bear cooker, so I don't know.
I've never tasted bear.
I'll tell you what.
I can imagine that makes you one tough hombre, though.
I'll tell you what, actually. They did the bear butt, which is like a rump roast, and he did it like a pot roast, and it was as good as any, fall apart beef pot roast you could imagine. And then he did the tenderloin in mushrooms and onions and some sauce in a foil on the grill until it was cooked all. And you have to cook bear. You can't eat bear anything less than well done. It's just the way it is, because unfortunately it can carry some stuff. So you're not going to eat medium rare bear meat. So you got to watch it not to get tough. But boy, it was good. And he's always got good bear. This is like the 4th or 5th time over the years I've eaten his bear meat, and every year he shoots one. And like I say,
it's not gamey?
What's that?
It's not gamey?
You know what? It's not real gamey. Now, again, I'm a guy that eats game meat, so coming from me, maybe somebody else might detect it, but I don't think so. I pay careful attention to my food. Now, that bear butt, if I had served you the bear butt and just told you it was roast beef, I don't think you would have even noticed. The tenderloin has slightly different, a little bit more tang to it maybe, but not anything that you would associate with that bad gamey taste.
I kind of grew up with it. As a child, I grew up, spent a lot of time in Perry County. And there, my grandmother she'd make pot pie.
Uh-huh.
And she'd say it's chicken pot pie, but it would be squirrel or groundhog or whatever my uncles would shoot out of the pot. But as a kid, I guess it's chicken,
Well, and actually that's old. That's the old style, pot pie. What are we eating? We're eating pot pie. Well, what's the meat? Does it matter? That's
yep, right.
We had some meat and we put it in a crust, and this is what we're having. Yeah, I had a friend who was Malaysian, but cooked Chinese. Long story, but he used to say that the problem with you Americans is you always want to know what the meat is, and he's like, if I'm talking to somebody at home, it's what sauce are you using? He's like, we've got all these different combinations of flavors and sauces that we make. He's like, what vegetable or what meat you use is just basically what's available at the moment or what do you have laying around. He's like, somebody wouldn't ask me what I was, whether I was making pork or chicken. They were more interested in what sauce I was using. He's like, you guys always want to know what the meat is first. I thought
that's probably our generation we grew up in too.
Right.
We're probably the last people that kind of knew people who grew up during the Depression.
Right, going back to pot pie, which was, what are we eating? Pot pie. It doesn't matter. It's exactly whatever meat or vegetables we had that roughly fit this description. Could be squirrel, could be possum, could be fill in the blank. Which by the way, I'm told possum's good, but I have not eaten one yet. So,
well, it tastes a lot like chicken.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Said the one frog to the other frog about what do frog legs taste like. I saw that T-shirt somewhere. Well, Don, I'm going to take my Father's Day prerogative and probably wind the show down a little early tonight, so I'm going to let you go.
Yep, me too.
All right,
I'm
my
just
friend.
coming into port now, ready to go drink some beers myself.
All right, thanks for listening, my friend.
All right, buddy. Talk to you again.
Bye. All right, you've been listening to Rominger Radio. This is Carl Rominger. As you know, we're on every Sunday night and every Wednesday night, usually 6 to 9 on Sundays and 7 to 9 on Wednesdays. However, because it's an internet-based show and sometimes we go late, sometimes we end early, I'm going to exercise my prerogative because it is Father's Day and there's a little bit more to be done here yet today to get off a little early, which, hey, can you complain? No, I can't complain. Okay, so let's recap real quick. The world is a mess. World War III could have already started. We just don't know where it is. On the other hand, we could 20 years from now be still having the same conversation. However, I would predict in the next decade, we're going to see some major changes in world structure and world power, both because of potential loss of influence by the United States and also because of the rise of other powers. Actually, the United States does not have to lose power to lose influence. We just have to lose relative power versus others. We still spend way more on our military than a lot of other people combined, and we're still way ahead of the rest of the world. But as shows of force become asymmetrical, as technology increases, we've got drones, right? Well, guess what? Some guy with a stealth drone and really good software can do what we do. Maybe not at the scale, but they can penetrate a weapon into an area, into a city. As smaller and smaller organizations, short of governments, sort of nation states, get a hold of advanced technology and the asymmetrical warfare increases, our ability and the bonus of projecting our power seemingly wane. So I would expect major realignments. What else would I expect? Unfortunately, I expect that within the next 10 years, we're going to see some kind of major conflict involving a biological or chemical or nuclear strike of probably not catastrophic proportions, but of ones which are going to fundamentally alter our reactions in the future. I really believe that to be true, unfortunately. On a lighter note, however, I suspect that will be dealt with and that will be the end of it, because if we don't get our act together when it comes to nuclear weapons, biological weapons, and chemical weapons, and as every theocracy in the world gets armed with them, we must live in constant fear that they'll be used. And so it's either going to work itself out or it won't, and I would say in pretty short order. And on that note, I also think continued growth of economic connections and making all the world fat and happy is in our best interest. So stop knocking foreign aid, you morons. All right, anyhow, Carl Rominger here, signing out from Rominger Radio. I'll be on live Wednesday from 7 to 9 taking your calls. Of course, the number will still be 717-916-5189. Happy Father's Day. Take care.